hit the wrong button. To achieve is where I left off. A common goal. It was always for me about the group dynamic, the camaraderie, and the process of creating. I think as a group, some directors they tell you what to do, where to go, how to stand, etc. And Barbara, obviously, by virtue of being a high school teacher, had to do some of that. But she really opened it up to us to be part of the creative process, and that is really who I became as an artist. Was not trying to implement my overranging view on a play, but finding the play together with the people that I cast and utilizing everybody's unique and individual talents. So under Milkwood, I saw it and was extraordinarily moved by it. And I wasn't cast. This is just funny how things work, things you aren't cast in, things you are. How those moments in my life, and I'll relate one specifically a little bit later, how really they can change the course of your life. Had I been cast in West Side Story, things might have been different in my life. Had I been cast in Under Milkwood, things might have been different, but I wasn't. I don't regret that I wasn't because I love where my life is and I love what it's become. But those plays had a huge influence on me. And Under Milkwood, even though I wasn't in it, and Tom was in it, and Jeff Perry was in it, and Gary was in it, I think, and Bob Lovitz was in it, and Kathy Borowitz was in it. And I mean, it was so memorable to me that I think I've directed the show now in my life 3 or 4 times. Let's see, I did it in Tomball. I did it when I was a guest artist in Bensonville, Illinois, or I think, yeah, that was a long time ago. I did it when I was at Stanislaus. So I think maybe I've directed it 3 times because of a show that I saw when I was 16 years old. Unbelievable. Theater just was everything to me back then. Harris put together a show. Harris was involved in the theater as well as being an athlete. And he had been in Camelot. He had a nice role in that show. And he put together a show for part of, I don't know if it was part of stunts or it was just a show that he put together on his own. And it was called The Days of Wine and Pantomime. Built off the title of a great movie. If you've never watched it, Nick, I know you appreciate cinema. Watch The Days of Wine and Roses. It's a phenomenal movie with Jack Lemmon. Just beautiful, beautiful story. That's where he got it, The Days of Wine and Pantomime. And I don't remember much about that show other than it was all scenes that were acted out without words. But I remember one scene very clearly, and it was called The Doorman. And in The Doorman, I was the young new doorman who was coming onto a job to replace a guy who'd been the doorman there for many years, and Gary played that role. And I remember I came on, and it was very moving. He had underscored a lot of these scenes with music, including The Days of Wine and Roses, which is a song, and then My Way, which is a very famous Frank Sinatra song. And I think he had found instrumental versions or something, I can't remember. But that was where Gary and I were really bonding in our friendship. And I think the show that Harris put together and directed, The Days of Wine and Pantomime, was really influential. And Gary was in Tartuffe, I was in Tartuffe. I think that summer we did a musical together that was taking place that one of Peggy's friends, Judy Jacobs, was producing. So we spent a lot of time together. Maybe it was between freshman and sophomore year. I can't remember because the recollection of the first time I ever met Gary Sinise was at this audition for this summer show. It must have been between freshman and sophomore year. And I went out. It was the play was called Carnival, and it's a musical, and it takes place at a carnival. It became a movie called Lily. And at the audition, the director split the group into 2 and did an improvisation, something probably that might have been one of the first times I'd ever been introduced to it, an improvisation, even though that became something I did. And one side, their objective was no matter what anybody on the other side does, you will not engage with them. You will not become their friend. So that he gave to side A. To side B, and we were separated, kind of like social dancing. To side B, he said, you must make a friend on the other side. You have to make a friend. And no matter what you do, become their friend. So he had given us these opposing viewpoints and of what we had to do. And then he started the scene to go on, and I'm wandering around and I'm not paying attention to anybody because that was my objective, right? And Gary, out of nowhere, came and tackled me and threw me to the ground and got on top of me. And being claustrophobic, it freaked me out a little bit. And he held me down just for a couple of seconds. You're going to be my friend, right? You're going to be my friend. And even though it was against my objective, I said, yes, just let me up. I don't care. I'll be your friend. I'll be your friend. And that was the first time we ever met. I doubt Gary even remembers that. But that was the beginning of a really amazing friendship that I had throughout high school and for quite a while after high school. Sad to me today that it doesn't really exist that way anymore. I mean, when we do talk or when we do communicate, it's very nice. It's kind of a lovely thing. But so sophomore year was super influential for me. Uh, Sophomore year was Camelot. Sophomore year was Tartuffe. Sophomore year was the Days of Wine and Pantomime. I mean, there was just so much going on theatrically, and still, sports were super important to me. The Cubs, the Bulls, the Bears. My dad would take me. He had season tickets to the Chicago Bears games, and he would take me out in the freezing cold. Initially, when I was a little boy, and they played at Wrigley Field for a few years, and I would just be frozen solid. And then, he continued to take me to games. He shared his tickets with a guy named Frank Manning. I think I might have talked about him earlier, but he was like definitely a beatnik. Like, again, somebody like my dad's, one of my dad's better friends, long hair, a little goatee beard, an artist. My dad was kind of a straight-laced kind of guy, but here he was, friends with this guy, Frank Manning. Frank Manning, I might add, who had the same birthday as me, obviously not the same year. Frank Manning lived in the same apartment in Chicago on Deming, right off of Clark Street, for over 50 years, rented an apartment. Really cool guy. He had a Jaguar convertible in his garage that was his pet project that he worked on for years and years and years. Super nice guy. My love affair with dogs, I don't know that I have touched on that, but I'll segue a little bit. One of the first dogs that I ever really got close to was a dog, a basset hound named Puddles, hence our basset beagle named Puddles. That's where he got his name. Puddles lived in our neighborhood when I lived on Glencoe Avenue, where I've driven you by many times. And at night, he was the Barker's dog, Terry Barker, Pat Barker, some other people that were friends of mine who lived right on Gray. And they would let him out every night, and Puddles would just go on his little tour from house to house and get treats. And he would come by our house about the same time every night and just kind of hang out at the bottom of our steps that led to our back door and wait for his treat. And my mom would throw him a piece of bologna. And Puddles just hung in the neighborhood. So Puddles was one of my first dogs that I ever fell in love with and was just that. And my Aunt Sylvia, my dad's older sister, lived in Hyde Park for her whole life. We would go there for Thanksgiving. We would go there sometimes for a Passover, and I told you about Passover before. And they had a Weimaraner named Trudy. And so Girl is kind of a new incarnation of another dog that was one of my first canine loves, which was Trudy. And I'll end this segment with a story, not the happiest story, but a good story nonetheless. I really wanted a dog. I knew Trudy, I knew Puddles, and I really wanted a dog, and I just was unrelenting with my father that we need to get a dog. And I remember finding in a book somewhere that the statement, every child should have a dog. And I remember taking it and showing it to my dad and saying, every child should have a dog, every child. And tears in my eyes. I wanted a dog. And my mom kind of wanted a dog, but my dad, he kind of was not for having a dog. Not, I don't think that he didn't like dogs, but he just like, who's going to take responsibility and this and that. Anyway, we finally went out and got a dog, a beagle, and we named that beagle Buddy. And Buddy was great. But loved Buddy. But shortly after we got Buddy, Buddy started burping all the time. And he would burp and we would laugh. It was really kind of cute. What we didn't know was that he had contracted parvo. And parvo, it's not a disease that dogs get over easily. Poe, I don't know how, but he survived it near death. But Poe survived it. Another dog that I'll tell you a story about a little later on, not as lucky. And Buddy died, and I was devastated, as was my mom. We were destroyed. And my dad just said, I can never risk seeing you this sad again. And we can't get another dog. He just could not stand seeing us as decimated as we were. But Buddy really laid the seed for me that when I had a chance, I was going to get a dog. And dogs have always been an important part of my life. So that's it for this segment, and moving on.